I feel paralyzed.
Hey guys, I've actually been asked a number of times by people on my server, you know, especially Frosty Case who are trying to learn Unholy, or I used to dual hero a lot, so I'd beat them as Unholy and they'd be like, oh wow, how do you play Unholy? And it's really hard to teach something like that. It's not a very hard class to play, but the fact is, you can't just tell them. So I'm going to make a few part kind of probably totaling 1 hour Unholy Death Knight WoW 101, you know, how to train your DK. Um, that DK. So, this first video will be more about talent choices and glyphs, and then I'll make another video about, you know, managing your cooldowns, managing stuff like that. I'll also throw in gemming in this one, reforging for 5.4, but it's pretty easy. So, the first thing is Unholy. You gotta remember, your dots do a lot of damage, so this is kind of what I normally have. I'll explain everything. Roiling Blood, kind of the staple thing. In 2s it's not as important, in 3s it's very nice, in 5s it is extremely nice. RBGs, I don't know how you could live without it. You just pull so much damage. I mean, 5s, you can have 50, 60k DPS by just sitting there spamming Blood Boil. Plague Leech, it's not bad. You might want to pick this in like 2s or something, but it works really well with Unholy because you only spend 1 rune to reapply 2 dots. So when they're about to fall off, you take those dots, make them into 2 runes, spend one of those runes reapplying the dots. It can work out pretty well. Unholy Blight, I would say you could use this, especially if you're using Chillblains. You could use Unholy Blight in combination with Chillblains. Typically you'd only do this in like 2s because, like I said, Roiling Blood, applying all your dots to everyone is just extremely powerful. So, baseline, Roiling Blood, all the way for me. Next tier, Lichborn, I normally select. Purgatory, you'll pretty much never find a real use for in Arena or RBGs. It's just not that good. I don't really know how else to say it. The only time I've ever really used it, I was pushing 2s. My teammate was a Holy Priest. Purgatory saved me a couple times because he would put wings on me and I would just sack my ghoul and that'd be a full heal basically. That's really about it. Anti-magic zone, it's kind of, if they don't have any fear or sleep effects, things like that, AMZ can be your choice. AMZ's been really nerfed. It's just not very good anymore. But, you know, in a pinch, you have to do it. If you're getting bursted by a frost mage, it can still be nice. Lichborn, not only does it get you out of fears, well, you can read it right here, charms, fears, and sleeps, but your death coil, you turn undead, so your death coil can heal you. Those heals can actually crit heal you pretty well, you know, 120, 130k heals. That's nothing to scoff at. But for the most part, you will simply use it to break out of the fears and stuff. As a DK, you have Lichborn, Icebound, Desecrated, and you can have a trinket. I mean, that's 4 trinkets. It's really nice. The next tier, Death's Advance. Actually, I really wish this was maybe baseline or something for Unholy, and Chillblains could be baseline for Frost, something like that, but it's actually a really good talent, but it's hard to sacrifice the stun for it. Chillblains, normally I see people use this against Mistweavers and stuff. Honestly, you can use Asphyxiate against a Mistweaver. If you're getting good on your DK, you can actually micromanage really well with your ghoul, and you can use the ghoul to stun and interrupt and stuff. So unless you plan to train the Mistweaver, you don't really need this. It's also really nice against things like warriors. You can just spam Chains of Ice, but for the most part, Asphyxiate will give you what you need. I use it as an off stun pretty much 90% of the time. The only time I use it to stun the target is either when someone says, hey, I use my stun on the off target, or they're completely DR. Actually, if they're completely DR'd, you can do it. It'll still silence them. But For the most part, Asphyxiate's the way to go. Death Siphon, just never pick it. Past level, I think 80 or something, it just isn't any good. And low level is only fun because you can one-shot people with it. Death Pact also, it's good against burst comps. It's fine. It's a decent heal, kinda, with battle fatigue. It'll heal you maybe like 30% of your health after you put in your PvP power, maybe 40%. It's nice, but it's a one-time heal. If your ghoul's dead and you're not paying attention, then clearly can't use it. So for the most part, conversion. If you use conversion, what you need to do is make this macro, and all it is slash cast exclamation mark conversion, and I'll show you what it does. When you spam the button that it's dang it. When you spam the button it's attached to, it'll actually tick heal you twice, and that can be really nice for surviving. It doesn't turn it off though, so you'll need to have it on your bar somewhere to turn it off. And the 75 tier, Blood Tap is pretty much always the way to go. Runic Empowerment is cute, Runic Corruption is cute. Honestly, they're just not as good. You can actually put this even through a simulator, and it'll tell you that Blood Tap more often than not gives you more DPS than the others. And the bad thing about Runic Empowerment is it has to be a fully depleted rune. Essentially, it has to be a rune you just used. It could actually proc and you would just not get the effect because you don't have a fully depleted rune. It happens. Blood Tap, you don't need to do this. I actually have it macroed because it has no internal cooldown. I have it macroed to a few skills so that it just gives me the death runes. That's one thing you have to pay attention to when your death runes come up. You definitely want to apply the necrotic for the most part. I'll have another video kind of explaining how I open against certain classes, because sometimes they're just different things you want to do. The 90 tier, I don't care if you're a human, I don't care what you're going against. If you use Remorseless Winter, you're probably doing something wrong. Remorseless Winter can be broken out of by monks, can be AMS'd by DKs, it can be freedomed, it can be dispelled. I mean, it's not like Asphyxiate. Asphyxiate cannot be dispelled. It's not a magical effect, it's a physical. Remorseless Winter is magical, it can be dispelled, the stacks can be dispelled, rogues can cloak it. I mean, there's just so many things wrong with Remorseless Winter. Anyone who tells you to use that better have a damn good reason. Gorfine's Grasp is actually very good in 5s, and it's very good in RPGs. In 5s, one of the fun things to do is get a Boomkin to Ursul's Vortex Solar Beam on your target when you Gorfine them. Gorfine them all into you, you just destroy things, you blood boil them, they all get dotted. For the most part, I use Desecrated Ground. Desecrated Ground is just awesome. It's actually getting buff next expansion, so it'll remove roots, snares, and there's just nothing really wrong with it. It's an AoE. If you just walk back into it, or not walk back into it, but if you get re-stunned into it, it's not going to work. A lot of people, you'll notice that lower MMRs, people don't even notice it's there. They won't look at the ground. They'll just say, why the hell is he not getting stunned? Wow, this game's broken. So just keep that in mind. So, like I said, this is kind of the base thing. There might be some things you want to change up, depending on what you're playing against. Kind of give you a few ideas of when you would change things up, but for the most part, I don't change from this that often. Unless it's changing out of Lichborn, sometimes out of Roiling Blood, almost never out of Asphyxiate, almost never out of Conversion, and basically never out of Desecrated Ground. Now, Glyphs, my main setup for Glyphs is Unholy Frenzy, Shifting Presences, and Icy Touch. Unholy Frenzy is kind of my pick just because I like to duel a lot, and World PvP when I see people running around out there. Honestly, it's not that great. If you have a good healer, you're not really going to need it. It's not going to matter. Shifting Presences is really nice because you go red and green a lot, and if you have to switch between the two, it sucks to lose your runic power. And in the same video where I talk about openers and stuff like that, I'll talk about Shifting Presences. For the most part, though, you should know that you want to be in blood, especially if you're getting targeted. If you're not getting targeted, you might switch to Unholy. In that case, you'll keep most of your runic power, which is really nice. Now, Glyph of Icy Touch is your Dispel. You don't need this if your team has a Purge. Like, if you have a Shaman or a Holy Priest or something, you don't really need that. It is really nice. It can get rid of bops from pallies. It can get rid of all those magical effects like stand buffs and stuff like that. But if you don't need it, you don't really want to use it. Your other glyphs, a lot of people will have Dark Simulacrum as a main glyph, and I can't really blame them. I'll talk about how you kind of use that in another video. Dark Succor basically never. Glyph of Death and Decay is actually interesting. You might find a use for it when you play. I don't typically need to slow people because I'd rather just chains them instead of using an Unholy rune on this, but it's not bad. I mean, you put a Death and Decay down, things get slowed, you can catch up to them. It's kind of your choice. Death Coil, I've never honestly used it, but it sounds pretty interesting. Death Grip, I used to use this. You don't need it. You shouldn't need it. Most of your death grips, if they're not being used offensively, which for the most part, hopefully you can keep your target on you if they're not already on you, you want to use it kind of defensively for your healer or whatever, using a death grip to grip the warrior away from them. And remember, when you death grip, your PvP set bonus gives you basically 2 charges if you use it within a few seconds. Don't be one of those people that death grips, lets the mage blink away and doesn't death grip back. Even if they don't blink away, you might if you're dueling, you might as well use that second death grip while you can, because it will interrupt whatever they're trying to do. You know, if it's a mage, you death grip and they're sitting by you still, they're not blinking away, they're like, oh, I'll wait for his death grip. Just do it again. It'll interrupt him, it'll put him off balance. Endearing Infection. Some people argue with me about this. Honestly, if you... Okay. The only healers that cannot dispel your dots are Shammies and Druids. If you're going against one of those as a healer, you don't really need Endearing Infection. Sometimes you'll find a Paladin or a Monk who DPS who dispels themselves. Sucks for you, but usually a gamble I'm willing to take. Otherwise, I use this. I do massive damage with it. It doesn't hurt me to have it. I suggest you use it when you know they're going to be dispelling. And you don't want to waste your runes keeping your uptime on the dots. You want to use the runes when you have to for dots, because for the most part you want to be doing other things. Glyph of Icebound Fortitude, I'll sometimes use this against warriors, or especially RPS, or sorry, Rogue Mage Priest, RMP, yeah. I'll use it against RMP a lot, or WMD. Sometimes it's a bad gamble, because sometimes the warrior doesn't even have a stun spect, but it's not really that bad, especially if they have a mage on the team. They'll pretty much never catch you. Icy Touch, we've explained. Pestilence, I use this in 3s and 5s and RBGs, not so much 2s. In 3s, not all the time either. If it's a warlock using a pet or a hunter, I pretty much always try to, because it's really nice to be able to kill their pet with cleave. Regenerative magic is so important. When you go up against, especially like a Boomkin, Affliction, Ellie Affliction, Spell Cleaves, it's really nice to use regenerative magic. Your AMS comes up a lot more, and there's just so many things that's nice about it. For the most part, that's all you'll ever really need to change. Your minor glyphs are basically all just for fun, but I do use Path of Frost, I do use Horn of Winter, just obviously for fun, and Resilient Grip, just in case. So, I'll put out my next part of this 101 in probably a day or two, but here's a good start for you. If you have any questions, you can just send me a message. If you guys like what you see, go ahead and subscribe. You can visit the channel to visit our site, visit our Facebook and Twitter, where I'm basically just talking to myself right now, but we'll get over that. And hope to see you guys back.